I started on this project in 2014, so I went down to Antarctica as a field technician my first year. And after my first season as a field technician, I was hired as a master's student. After I did my master's degree, I started my PhD on the project, and the goal of my PhD work is to understand how individual variation in traits of Weddell seals impacts different population metrics such as vital rates, so like survival and reproduction, and then also how that variation and how that affects vital rates influences other population metrics such as population growth.
We've spent a couple of decades trying to understand how much variability there is in the outcomes of individuals' lives. And so what do we mean by that? Well, some individuals start reproducing and having babies earlier in life than others. Some live longer than others. And we're aware of some of that very easily because the animals are tagged and you're like, wow, she started having babies at 5 and she's still having babies at 30. But it's taken us decades to have enough information on enough animals to really pin down just how variable individuals are. And so we now know that 80% of our animals never have a baby. They don't live very long, they disappear pretty quickly in that Antarctic environment. Among the 20% that do survive to adulthood and go on to have babies among our female seals, there's still a lot of variation, and we've been really struck by it, that some animals live a pretty long life but don't make a baby very often, maybe one every 3, 4, 5 years. So they have at best 1 or 2 pups in a lifetime. The typical is a few, maybe a handful of pups in a lifetime for these mothers. But then there's these few exceptional animals that really stand out, that have more than 20 babies and live into their 30s. So we've been really pleased that we've been able to document that, and some really talented graduate students have done a great job on that. People like Thierry Chambert and Terrell Patterson, Kaitlin Macdonald.
I just published a new paper in the Journal of Animal Ecology. The paper is investigating how individual variation, or individual heterogeneity is another term, in the probability of reproduction of female Weddell seals, how that individual variation influences the population growth rate.
Kaitlin's recent work has really been interesting because first we measured that there was variation and it was pretty strong. And a lot of animals are average and a few are real kind of like, don't produce very often. And then there's a small-ish number that really put out a lot of pups and live a long life. So Kaitlin's question, the new paper that you asked about, really delves into, well, how important are those? There aren't very many of them, but they sure do a lot in their lives. And so we got curious, well, just how important are they? So that's what the paper's about.
And basically what we found was that it doesn't matter.
Maybe we should have known it all along. But those supermoms are not very common, and at best they can produce 1 pup a year because this species only produces a pup a year when they produce. The litter size is 1. Well, there aren't very many of them and they can't do very much in any given year. So really they're not that important to the population's growth in any one year. Begs another question, which is maybe over a lifetime their genetic contributions, if there's a genetic component to their greatness, if you will, maybe they're really important to the evolutionary traits of the population. That's for another day and another student and another question. And that's the way the project rolls. But for now, what Kaitlin's paper really showed is that there's small enough in number and what they can do in any given year is modest enough that they don't really totally change the population's growth rate in any way. She, in the computer simulations, took them away in a simulated world, and we find that not much changes when you take them away. So, and the same thing when we take the real weaker animals away, not much changes. So fundamentally what we learned was the average animals are really common, and that's what's driving the show.